housewives.
Hey, hey, welcome back.
Welcome back. Oh my gosh, the sun is shining and it feels wonderful.
Yes,
I
and that
mean,
spring is here.
yeah, but I don't know what
Well,
weather it
I mean,
is.
no, that's Midwest.
Yeah. Is it 30 degrees or is it 90? Because I feel like we've had both this week.
Yep.
So we're still in the middle of spring, but it is okay because, like I said, the sun is shining and so we're here. But we have got another fabulous guest for you. And this is one of those fun connections that we got because of just people saying, "Hey, you know who you need to talk to? You need to talk to them." And this is it. So I'm going to have Tracy introduce her.
Yes. Okay. Today we have Annie Wolf with us. She created Girls Club to help educate girls on the anatomy and the magic of their changing bodies. A former elementary school teacher turned girls empowerment puberty educator, she's changing the narrative around the talk and how girls relate to their bodies. Welcome to the show, Annie.
Thank you so much, Tracy and Tori. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Okay, Tracy, you have to say how you got introduced to Annie.
Yeah,
Or like,
so I obviously we love connections. So Annie is local. She's here in Kansas City. We're doing it virtual because sometimes that's just how our lives work. But Annie is local here to the Kansas City area. And I have a friend who is a friend of your friend. And she
Yes.
kept sending me some of your stuff from Instagram. And she's like, oh my gosh, you need to have her on your podcast. She's so great. And that was over a year ago. But we were in the middle of a series that, this message wasn't a part of. It was something that we were doing a little bit different. And then, yet again, at the beginning of this season, my friend sent another message, and it was of a podcast of Bryce Hamilton, who is Accidental Experts, and she's been on our podcast. And I was like,
Oh,
oh my
cool.
gosh, this connection world has been fabulous. I love the
Yes.
podcasting world, and I love people who are in the world and listening to podcasts and love to share with others because, hey, us podcasters, we love to connect and encourage each other and share our guests who are providing incredible info for all our listeners. So that's how we got here. And I love it.
I know. I love those little like taps on the shoulders, where you just sort of get these little things come across your desk and you kind of go, okay, let me look at that. And then if it
Yep.
keeps happening, it's like, okay, I really need to look at this closer. I love that.
Yes. And so you have a story, obviously, and how you got to doing what you're doing. So tell our listeners first just a little bit about you and your family and how you got here.
Sure. Yeah. So I originally was a classroom teacher. I taught second grade, third grade, and fifth grade for a total of about 12 years. And I really loved teaching, especially when I didn't have kids, and it was just
Mhm.
me and I could just pour myself into, becoming the best teacher I could be. And I loved it for so long. And then once I started a family, I took a little break so that I could stay home with my kids and then went back to teaching shortly after. They were pretty little when I went back. And I found that it's kind of like trying to run a half marathon after you have kids. It's just
Mhm.
not quite the same. It's not quite as easy. And I found that, I still had a love for teaching in general, but I also felt like I was giving so much of my really great energy and love and tenderness and patience to the kids in my class. And then I would
Mhm.
come home and I would be so tired and I would almost have to like leave and go lay down before I could be a mom and be there for my kids and my husband. And that
Mhm.
went on honestly for a pretty long time before financially we could kind of think about making a change. And so that's actually when I started to get a little more and more tired. And I also noticed that my interest and my passion started to shift a little bit. And I noticed that the things that I really loved about teaching weren't actually teaching reading and math. Although it's fine. But what I really enjoyed was, hosting class meetings and doing compliment circles and teaching the social emotional, the character traits that we were supposed to teach for that month that other teachers maybe were like, oh, okay, I'm going to skip this. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yes, and we're teaching respect. We're teaching responsibility and empathy. And those were the things I really enjoyed. And so I kind of did some self reflection and thought, okay, I think I need to make a change. So I just dreamed up a job role, which was essentially like a social worker. And I was thinking that I would go visit the classrooms in the elementary school that I worked in. And I would be the one to teach those character traits. And I would teach the kids, you know, we would have class meetings and we would go around the circle and we would share and I would teach them breathing strategies. So this was like my grand idea. And I took it all the way up the chain at my school district. And, everyone loved it and they kept saying, "Yeah, go talk to him, go talk to her." And so I kind of just did that until I got to the top. And the assistant superintendent, of course, loved this idea, but then said, "We love it, but we just can't fund this position right now."
Mhm.
So I was really bummed about that, but I had spent so much time in this imagining of a new role for myself that I just energetically was like over here and doing something else, thinking about doing something else that I just knew that I couldn't go back to the classroom.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Okay, I'm sorry that you can't fund this. Now I have to resign." So
Mhm.
I just ended up leaving the classroom and I really did not have a plan. And at that time, my daughter was in 3rd grade. She had just finished 3rd grade. And we have, like the text chain, the mom group, we were all sort of talking about how our daughters are getting to the age where, they're asking questions, they're wondering, puberty is on the horizon. How do we handle that? And I talked to my friends and shared with them that, my daughter she's just a really curious individual. And so she had asked a lot of these questions earlier. And so I talked to my friends and said, "Well, Evie already asked me all these questions. So this is what I said. This is what I told her." And so my friends were like, "That's amazing. Can you, like everything you just said, can you teach our daughters what you taught yours?" And I actually took the invitation seriously and I said, "If you're serious, like I will write some lesson plans. I will come up with a curriculum." Like, "Are you serious?" And they were like, "Yeah, yeah." So I ended up having my daughter and like 5 of her friends come over for once a week for about a month. And I taught them some of their like female anatomy, like what their body parts are called, where they're located, how they function. We talked about puberty. We talked about how to prepare for the changes that are coming. And I also incorporated some of those, some of my favorite things, which were sitting in a circle. Let's go around and everybody, how is your day? Share a little bit. How are you
Mhm.
feeling? And then at the end of class two, at the beginning at the end of class, we would do an affirmation. So if the lesson was about puberty and we're talking about how our bodies are changing, then the affirmation is, "My body is growing in a beautiful way." And so we all say that together. And then at the end of class, I would give them these little tattoos and they would say this affirmation 3 times as they're putting on this tattoo. So it was just kind of like all of the things that I felt like were important kind of in one class. And the girls ended up having a great time. They're with their friends. It's a small group.
Mhm.
They get to talk, they get to they get to share, and it just was fun. And so, honestly, I kind of thought it was just for my daughter and her friends, and after I finished that one series, I thought, "I actually think all girls could benefit from this education, from this experience." And the
Mhm.
moms were so grateful because it opened a door of communication with them, and the
Yeah.
girls would come home from class and say, "Oh my gosh, this is what we talked about. Tell me more." They would have more questions. And so the moms appreciated that they didn't have to say, "Okay, sit down. We're going to talk about."
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
just it kind of was a natural way of bringing up the topic so they could kind of weave their own messages in there too, and it became kind of like a partnership, a parent partnership, and
Yep.
then also this really safe space for girls to share, to learn, to be excited about being a
Mhm.
girl, to ask questions, to be curious, and all of that. It has a feeling of safety and fun and
Yeah.
celebration. So I feel like I've just talked for 5 minutes straight, but
No, I absolutely love that. I have so many thoughts and questions. So my first was, is your daughter your oldest?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I think that plays a part too on from a parent perspective. So many of that the talk of the first child like sets the tone for how like the talks go moving forward, right? So
Yes.
that makes a lot of sense in how like you approached it. And then I also was just thinking as you were saying, like you were doing the circle, the talking, the affirmations, you're just setting your girls up for like, sisterhood of, talking with your friends about stuff. because I remember back when, I first got my cycle and, was going through puberty, like I went to my girlfriends first. I went to my friends first,
Yes.
and it's natural, to have
Yeah.
those conversations. And so you help the girls feel comfortable talking about that stuff together. And we
Yes.
all come from different, backgrounds, I guess, as far as like, what was it like for you? Did you talk a lot about it in your home or was it very quiet and shameful and not shameful,
Mhm.
but silent? And, so
Yeah.
I do love that you said that. Did you get any feedback from the moms as far as how their talks were in their bubbles and then how it translated to yours?
Yes, it's kind of a range, I would say. I've been doing this for long enough that you kind of get both ends of the spectrum. Some girls will
Mhm.
come to class and then they'll go home and say, listen to what we talked about today. Here's the period pack I made. And they're so excited to share with their parents. And then there are girls that will come to class and be totally open and then go home and not want to talk at all, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And I have to say, I have seen a pretty, I wouldn't say strong correlation, but I think when I have younger girls like third grade, fourth grade, that is such a time where there still is such an innocence and they don't have like a self consciousness. There's not a
Yeah.
whole lot of like, oh, how does it sound if I say this? They're not thinking
Yeah.
about how they're being perceived as much. They're just sort of like, there for whatever you have for them. They're just little
Mhm.
sponges and they're really open to the information that you share with them and the way that you share it. So if you're excited about it and you're talking about it, they're like, "Oh, okay. That's what we're doing." And they just
Mhm.
kind of go with it. They take their cues from us as their
Yeah.
leaders and mentors and teachers. But then I do notice that the older girls, like 5th, 6th, I've even done some 7th grade too. That's when like the older they get, it's like if you're just starting the conversation in 6th grade, there's a little bit of like an exterior, right? And they don't really want to talk about it. They're sort of like, "Oh, cringe." So I just feel like it's
Mhm.
it's so nice to start when they're in 3rd grade when you can really give them basic information that's at their developmental stage and kind of
Mhm.
meet them where they are. And then it's like the door's open. This is what we're doing. We're talking about this. The conversation's here and we just kind of like keep it going, and as questions come, the girls find out that there's nothing's really off limits, and your
Yeah.
curiosity is so important, and we get excited. "Oh, that's such a great question." It's like, "Yes, bring your questions to us humans. Don't go to the internet and look
No.
something up
For the
because you're
love,
bored."
do not go to the
Right?
internet and Google anything.
Especially if you're
Don't
like,
do it.
puberty leads to sex, and if you Google anything, watch out.
Dude, I
We're
mean,
not doing that.
no, the fact that Dick's Sporting Goods, I mean, we've had kids Google like, "Oh, well, I just wanted to look for something volleyball or whatever,"
Yeah.
and then what is and you're like, "Don't put in www dot."
No, it's
It's no, you have to put the
it's
whole.
terrible.
Yes, it is
I mean,
awful.
I remember like a few weeks ago, my daughter was looking up what celebrities have the same birthday as me. And she found one celebrity and she was like, I don't know who that is. And she clicked on it. It was like a porn
Ooh.
star. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, images. I was like, oh, get out of there. I mean, it
It's
was
so
Oh,
bad.
just
so bad.
one
It's
click,
so
completely
bad.
innocent. Just like, so what? The whole idea behind Girls Club is this is a safe space with
Mhm.
a loving, compassionate teacher that's here to answer your questions, that's not afraid of these topics, that wants to help prepare you for what's to come, and hopefully, like, bridge the gap between parent and child so that
Mhm.
parents can start talking about this too. And it's like an easy, open window that now we can all start, just start the
Yeah.
conversation. And I think sometimes that's the hardest part is how do I start the conversation? I'm the parent. What do I
Mhm.
say? Where do I
Well,
start?
Well, especially since if it hasn't been a topic growing up in the house. Like
Yeah.
one of the things one of and I think I've shared this story before here on the podcast about I was at a like mom to mom thing that it was like the once a week, it was fellowship and then Bible study another week and so it just alternated, but we had the director of the church preschool come in And she was just talking to us about, like, okay, you're in this new stage of having preschoolers and they're asking questions. And she goes, and if one topic you haven't talked about is sex, you need to talk about sex. And like all these moms were like, what?
Already? Yeah.
They're like, I can't, like,
Everybody
that.
suddenly gets all rigid, right?
Right. And I'm like, we all know that you had at least sex once because you have children. That's why you're here. Like, come on, ladies. But especially in a church setting, nobody likes it. It is like, well, we don't talk about sex. We're like, what? How? We
Oh.
all know how this math worked, right? But,
Right?
anyways,
Yeah.
but she was just like, she goes, one of the greatest things we did as a family was start talking. We just talk about it and we don't make it weird.
Yeah.
She goes,
Yeah.
like, it's not like, we're talking about things at the dinner table or like what's inappropriate and things. But she's like, but it's just not it's just another topic for our family. Like and then
Mhm,
she goes,
mhm.
as our kids are getting older, she's like, I have found that they're sitting at dinner talking to us about, they're in high school now and they're going like, hey, so and so's doing this or that. And they're like, what is that? They're asking the questions because it was
Mhm.
just another topic around the dinner table. And
Yes.
she goes, that is one of the things that we have always. And I was like, that takes I'm like, yeah, I think if we start talking about it when they're, preschooler and as soon as they're learning stuff, and then the way you frame it, again, it's only weird if you don't talk about it and you just,
Yes.
Mhm.
and you get this, and the more you talk about it, the less awkward it gets within the family. Like
Yeah.
Absolutely.
that's
I
one of the
think
things
that's
that I,
key. Just like you're saying at the dinner table, it's like, I mean, I don't know what your experience is, but I feel like it just growing up that it just wasn't a topic that anybody
no,
wanted to talk about.
No.
mm-mm,
Religious affiliated or not, nobody really wanted to talk about it. It was kind of taboo, whether it's body parts or puberty changes or sex, like any of those topics. It was like, okay, we're going to give you
it's
a
a
little
stereotype.
information.
Right?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
the health education sex ed class is literally a stereotype of what everybody, the
Yeah.
gym teacher that's teaching
Yeah.
it, and it's
I feel like I had a health class in middle school, and all of that was in it. I think we talked about it.
Really?
oh, we had a health class.
I'm pretty sure in like 7th or 8th grade, I had a health class and it was in there,
Yeah.
like
I
all
So,
of
had
it.
I had a
like
5th grade
puberty
class.
and sex ed or
Yeah. I
okay.
feel like we talked. I mean, I know I watched videos, and I was I went back to be a teacher, long story. Went back to be a teacher, never taught a day in my life except for homeschooling post COVID.
Okay,
But
that
so there you go.
counts.
That's
That
going
There's
counts.
hold on. There's a whole chapter that you hold on.
Yeah, you
That's
don't
Skip a
I'll tell you all
chapter.
that later.
all right. That's another episode.
See, we've been friends for almost 10 years, and there's things that
Oh my God, 10 years.
we discover of each other on the podcast live. So we're like, "Ooh, we'll
Right,
talk about that later."
she was a cheerleader. Again, blows my mind, blows my mind.
You really
Okay.
are surprised I was a cheerleader?
No,
Okay. We're not gonna
well,
tangent. But anyway, where was I? See, this is what
no,
you did.
I'm sorry. You had a
Health
health class.
class. And
Health
what
class.
they taught. You were saying
Yep.
like you watched
Yep.
videos.
Oh, videos. Okay, when I watched all the videos because I was teaching for a while. And I think they start at 4th grade now. They get it a little bit earlier. It used to be just middle school, then it was 5th grade, but now they also watch a video in 4th grade. So I would love to know your perspective about, if a parent comes to you or, they're like, oh, my kid watched a video in 4th or 5th grade. We're good. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, okay, first of all, let me just say that the videos they show in school are very minimal. They're minimal and
Mm.
they're
Yeah.
singing songs like Meet the Near You. And it's like very
It's a
unrelatable.
joke to these kids. They're like,
Right?
really?
And they were
Which
made in the 1980s. And
And
you're
not
like,
updated.
and it's
they
not,
definitely leave something to be desired, right?
yeah. You're
Which
like,
I would say is,
mm,
well, okay, so the good part about having it at all in the schools is that I do think I do think that it gives some time and space for kids to be together and wonder and ask questions. I remember when I
Mhm.
taught 5th grade, that was like my favorite day, the growth and development day when all the girls would come to my classroom. And
mm,
I was like, okay, we're going to watch this video. But I'm telling you, you press play, it's a 20-minute video, and then you have 5 minutes of Q&A afterwards. I mean, that is it. And I noticed, well, we would tell everyone, you have to write down something. You can't just, everybody gets a little piece of paper and you either write down your question or I don't have a question because you don't want to make anybody feel weird for, oh, they have a question. So
Yeah.
right.
everybody writes something down and they turn it in. And then it was me and another teacher, and we would go through the questions. But the lines were so like drawn so harshly that you were not allowed to even answer a question if it wasn't addressed in the video, which,
Yeah.
right? It's like, well, the whole reason why they have a question is because the video didn't talk about that, right? There was a question about
Right.
menopause.
Yeah.
Like, do you have your period for life? And I was looking at my coworker and I was like, please tell me we can answer this question because that's such a good question. And it wasn't in the video. But
Mhm.
my point is, it like gets the conversation started. And then it's like, oh, 5 minutes are up, time to go to recess. And these
Yeah.
girls are like, what? They're like, actually, we'll miss a little recess. We just have a couple more
We wanna keep
questions.
talking. Yeah. We're
Yeah.
curious. Mhm.
Right. It opens the door in 30 minutes or 25 minutes is not enough. I feel like it could just be a class, like a semester long class and not a video. And actually, I don't know, maybe I take that back because I feel like we dump so much is dumped on teachers to say, oh, and also you need to do this for your class. And also
Mhm.
this. Make sure they're a well-rounded
Well, I
soul. That's your job, right?
well, and I love that well, I mean, this is putting their responsibility back on the parents because
Yeah.
I do believe that it is our responsibility to start the conversation with them, and we have I think because I think we have gotten parents have gotten I say lazy, but we have gotten content with like, "Oh, the school will do that 1-hour class with them," right? And so then we
Yeah.
were like, "Well, they'll figure it out." And and you're like, "Oh, well, no, Susie didn't figure it out." But
There's a lot
we
more to it.
there's a lot more to it, right? And then but I think with this kind of thing, it is the having the conversation with your daughter and saying, "Hey, like I know that this is going to be something that you want to know, and so like we're going to do this class with Miss Wolf, and
Mhm.
we're going to learn about the terminology, and we're going to learn about the puberty and how your body changes and what that looks like." But I think that puts the power back in the parents'
Mhm.
court, and
Mhm.
I mean, it's not I don't think at this point it's outsourcing it to like you would to a school or something like that and saying that it's their responsibility, but it's like, "Hey, well, and now that you're doing this with your friends, like, we can talk about it at home, and it's, like, something that I've engaged in and I've helped made happen. It didn't just happen,
Mhm.
on that Friday before break or whatever,
Mhm.
and the kids never wanna talk about it again."
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think go ahead, Tracy.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that sometimes we can overthink it as parents, like, "What do I
Mhm.
say? How do I start the conversation?" I think
Yeah.
we forget sometimes that we have so much wisdom just because we have lived experience. We've
Mhm.
been through puberty, our body has changed. We know what was difficult, we know what was
Mhm.
fun, we know
Yeah.
a lot already, so I think sometimes even just talking about our own experiences and saying, when I went through puberty, this is what I noticed. Are you
Yeah.
noticing that too? Because it's less, I guess, awkward if it's a conversation where you're just sharing experiences, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But
good.
I also wanted to say too, when you were talking about the videos in class and teaching just a little bit in class, it's like a lot of these videos are it's like 4th and 5th grade and 6th grade. It's like, I kind of feel like that's already too late. Girls are experiencing the beginning of
Yeah.
puberty sometimes in 3rd grade when they're 8, 9 years old, sometimes as young as 7. Some of these changes, not all at once, but it can be really scary if your body
Yeah.
starts to change and you have no idea what's going on. So,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
it's like I don't know. I feel like we got the information, like the period pamphlets in 6th grade when I was in school. And I just thought, I've already had my period. I've already
Mhm.
contended with a lot of these changes. I asked my mom about a few things. I figured out a few things on my own. I had a friend who was one of the only girls in the grade that got it before me. So we talked, and you just sort of figure it out. But I think that parents kind of in our age range are like wanting something better for our own
Mhm.
daughters and we're wanting more support. We're wanting more education because even learning about puberty is one thing, but it's like, it's hard to learn about puberty if you don't even understand your body parts and what's there,
What's
right?
happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
kind of can't talk about B before you know there's an A. So that's why I feel like it's so important that you don't just wait until 5th grade to start talking about puberty. You start,
Mhm.
in 3rd grade, or even like you said, Tori, before that, like when they're in preschool and you start naming body parts and you talk about
Mhm.
your own body with love and with sincerity and celebration, and kids are paying attention to
Yeah.
everything you say.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's like, make it count. You have that, there's
Mhm.
a lot of power in that to affect the general tone and the general like feeling about learning about your body parts, what they're
Mhm.
called, and just how you relate to your body, you
Well,
know?
and I think what I was gonna say earlier too, I think a lot of parents have this, like, we assume that if we talk about puberty and all the things in sex, then they're gonna go run off and have sex.
Mhm.
It's like we had this conversation, we did a couple episodes. We've had some, guests on here who've lost their kids to suicide, and they're like, have the conversation with your kids, and there's so many parents that are afraid to talk about suicide because it will plant the idea in their kids' heads. And let me tell you what, parents, if you don't already know, your kids have found out about suicide and sex all from social media, the internet, or somewhere else, or a
Right,
friend.
right.
We're not in the 90s anymore, where if you don't hear about it, you don't know about it. You know about everything now.
Yes.
Your kids know everything, and they're knowing it earlier. And so it's starting that conversation first so that when they hear it from all these other places, in those younger years, second, third, fourth, when you're
Mhm.
having the conversations and you're talking about the things, when they hear it later, they can come back and be like, oh, I've already had this conversation with my parents, so I can ask them about it,
Right,
versus having shame of like, "Oh my gosh, I just heard about this and I know this, but I am not going to my parents. That's too scary.
right.
We haven't talked about it before."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's kinda like even though those topics, granted, suicide and sex, they're kinda scary topics, right? Because we
Right.
know
Mhm.
that sex can result in a new life, and
Mhm.
you have to take that really seriously. Suicide,
Mhm.
right? Same thing. So they're scary topics, but I think I agree with you in the point that you're making, which is if we show our kids that we are a resource and we are available to talk about anything,
Mhm.
that is huge. That is huge. They're internalizing all of this information that's spoken and unspoken, which to your point before, Tori, when you were talking about how if you don't talk about something, that's teaching. That's teaching kids, we don't talk about that. That topic's off limits, right?
Yeah.
You might
Right.
think that you're just sort of like, we're gonna dodge it. But
Mhm.
you're also teaching, this is not something that you can come and talk to me about. I'm not going to talk about this. Which then, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like whenever there's a topic that's off limits, what it does is it teaches, oh, well, then maybe is there something wrong with that?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Now I'm confused. I don't have information. I don't have anybody to talk about it. So then we make up a story about it, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
And then who knows what that story is, if it's right or if it's wrong, accurate or inaccurate. But if nobody talks about it, well, we're just in our head, you
Mhm.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just so important. We have to be open. We have to be willing to talk about some of these big topics. And it's okay to maybe get it wrong or to
Mhm.
stumble or have it not be really like smooth, as long as we are talking about it and our kids know that we're here and we're not afraid to talk about these things.
Yeah.
Right. Especially with that, like to Tracy's point, is that our kids do have access to all the information in the world, right? Like one Google search and it could
Yeah.
go wrong really fast. But the fact that if you have like you had mentioned, Annie, if you have brought it up already, that the kid's like, oh, well, I've already talked to mom and dad about this. Like, this is something that this is a conversation I can return to.
Mhm.
And it's just like, I kind of want to just take my children and be like, okay, I'm going to say like all the things. And then I'm throwing out all these various topics,
Mhm.
drugs, sex,
Yes.
alcohol, all the things, like, so know that everything's under this umbrella that you can talk
Yes.
to
Yeah.
But you
because
have to.
I would rather them come to me
Mhm.
for like our values and where we see the importance of things
Yeah.
and what God has given us and what he calls to our lives for that information than for them to either Google it or to ask their friend who I don't know what their family values are and what
Right.
where their priorities are.
Mhm.
So I mean it is, like just like let me have diarrhea of the mouth of all the things. And that way, like,
I check the box.
yeah, all
Yeah.
the topics that if you ever have a question about any of these things, come to mom and dad, and we will totally tell you what we think. Like,
Yeah.
and explain and give you the information from our perspective. So
Yes.
that, yeah.
Almost to the point where the kids are like, oh, okay, that's enough.
Right.
Uh-huh.
There have been times where I don't know, I can't even remember. We were watching a movie and there was something and I paused it and I was like, okay, well, so do you know, I can't remember what the circumstance was, but my husband, I could see him and he was like getting uncomfortable and he was like, do we really need to? And I was like, I think we do. He's just like, don't pretend that nothing just happened on the TV screen, you know?
Yeah.
It. And it
Yeah.
almost is a
Pause it.
perfect doorway. Think
Yeah.
about all of the things that our kids are watching. Like our kids are, God bless the men that marry my daughters. And I have to pray for them daily because we have found shows that are adult shows that we like and that our
Yeah.
girls like, but it leads to conversations
Mhm.
like the suicide conversation, transgender, gay, like all these different things. So like you said, we stop the show and go, okay, hold on one second. This is where we see this. This is where that lines up. This is
Mhm.
our belief because of the Bible, da 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 da. And then it's
Yes.
just like, okay, play. And then
Right.
you just go back and then that's it.
30
And so,
seconds. 30
yeah.
seconds. Right.
And
Yeah.
it's not like this weird, like, oh, mom's doing the talk kind of thing, like, no.
Yeah.
Can
And
I
then,
just have some more green beans? No, hold
yes.
on. Mommy wants to talk
Right.
about puberty a little bit longer. Like, no,
And at the
like,
dinner table, there's a lot of like eye contact or avoidance of eye contact.
yes.
When we're
Yes.
watching a movie, it's so easy to be like, and done. And then we go back
Uh,
and everyone
Yeah.
can just move
Yeah.
on so
right. Yeah.
easily.
Mhm.
Yes. And your story just reminded me of, I had in one of my Girls Club classes, I had a girl say, I have a question for you, but I want to ask you when it's just the two of us. So whenever we have a break, I have a question for you. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be a good one. I always get excited, right?
Mhm.
So she asked me, she was like, hey, I was watching a movie with my family and I saw there were two people kissing and they were kind of like kissing a lot. And she was like, I felt something. I felt something. And she was like,
Oh.
what was that? Right.
Oh, yeah.
And she was like, I asked my mom and she was like, I don't know. So I thought I would ask you.
Oh,
And I was like, first of all, her poor mom, of course she knew. She just didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to
Right.
respond.
Right.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I was like, yes, okay. First of all, that is perfectly normal to see people
Mhm.
kissing and to feel something. It is what you're seeing on the screen is a sex related interaction.
Mhm.
So you have sex organs in your body and they're just waking up and they're responding to what you're seeing. It's
Mhm.
totally involuntary and it's part of being a human, the way that we're wired. So to your point, it's like when you watch something, it can be such a teachable moment that we can
Mhm.
take advantage of and say, "Oh my gosh, you're normal. This is part
Mhm.
of your makeup. This is part of being a human is we're wired this way. There's
Yep.
nothing wrong with you. It's okay. You just saw something and it woke you up and that's okay." And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
what a brave question.
Yeah,
I was
for real.
so excited to, help her work through it, which the it's like the main thing I hope she took away from that was just you're normal. It's
Mhm.
okay. Don't worry about that. This
Yeah.
is part of how your body is wired, which,
Yeah.
like if I really went into detail there, you could have a whole lesson on we as humans are wired for sexuality. We are sexual
Yeah.
beings. And so sometimes it's like it's involuntary. You see something, there's a body response
Mhm.
and it's linked and it's there, you're not thinking about it, but it's because you're wired that way that it's like I'm trying to like cut the shame. Like you don't need to
Yeah.
feel bad about that.
Mhm.
And I mean, she wasn't feeling bad, so I didn't even want to like plant that seed, right?
Yeah.
But it's
Right.
just again, it's like she was like looking for answers and she had this curiosity.
Mhm.
And that is just so I think that it's such an opportunity when
Mm.
kids, girls, boys are young enough and they're still coming and saying, "Hey, what's this? I have a
Yeah.
question about this." It's like, "Okay, come here and let me make sure we make this good."
Mhm.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. Well, and I would say too on that, like, I love that she didn't take the first response from mom of like, "Oh, that's nothing," and keep that forever
Mhm.
because that is where like the secret or the shame or those feelings come into play of like, I guess I'm weird. I guess I'm,
Yes.
I'm wrong. Something's wrong with me,
Yeah, she could have
And
made up a story, right?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and this is totally kind of off topic, but somewhat related. My daughter has OCD, and I will never forget when she was diagnosed and we were able to sit down and talk to her about it and tell her, this is why you have these thoughts, these are why you have these actions, this is why you have, your anxiety. And she was like, "So I'm not a bad person?" And I was like, "No,
Oh,
not at all." But because all of this was happening and we were doing so much therapy and we were trying to figure this out, I mean, it just took that like giant, veil of shame off of her and was like, "Oh." And now she's like, "I have OCD. This is the way my life is."
yes.
And it's like,
Yes.
and it is like that's just the way it is, even with puberty and the sex talks and all the things, you do these girls and boys, but girls carry around this whole like, well, if I feel this way or my body feels this way or my body's changing this way. We just, we have these like, ugh, feelings about it. And we shouldn't. Like, God created us to be such beautiful women, and our body goes through so much changes. And, we're designed to have babies and to go through all the changes. But I wanted to just, before we have to like wrap up, I know that you're going to have an upcoming class. You're coming soon for moms. Um,
Yes.
so, one, tell us a little bit about that because, a lot of the moms are bringing their daughters to you because they didn't have that conversation. And then the secondary thing I'd love for you to add before we have to close is, you're local, so you can do those classes here for, but people are listening all over the world. How do they get resources and where would they go to learn a little bit about this as well?
Yeah. Okay. Great questions. So yes, the moms who are putting their kids in girls club they're almost like, oh, I'm sad I didn't get this. When I was a kid, I wish I would have had this. And so I did create women's club, which is basically a class for women to learn about their bodies. There is still time to learn about our female bodies, what our body parts do, where they are, how they function, how they serve us, and then we talk about pleasure versus desire, sexuality. We talk about living fully into our lives
Mhm.
and saying yes to the things that we really want to say yes to, saying no to the things we want to say no to. A lot of us are moms. And so we've spent a good chunk of our lives really in caretaking
Mhm.
mode. And maybe now we're coming up on, okay, my kids don't need me quite as much. What do I want out of life? You
Mhm.
know, can I be a good mom and a good partner and still live the life that I want and thrive and, you know, do things that I enjoy? And do I have a career that I want? Do I want a career? What do I want out of life? And so
Mhm.
this is kind of the umbrella of women's club. And I have a partner right now. Her name's Jewel Anderson, and she is a licensed clinical counselor, and so she kind of brings in the emotions and the defenses that we have that kind
Mhm.
of get in the way of us living the life that we want. And then I kind of bring in the body and the celebration. So we've been working together teaching women's club, which is it's like 5 classes over the course of 5 months. And that's what we're doing right now. So we're talking about maybe doing some more for moms who really want the girls club experience, but for the adult
Themselves.
version of
Yeah.
ourselves. And then also, I have had just recently on Instagram, I had a reel that went viral and a lot of interest from other people either wanting resources about how to help their kids, their daughters learn about puberty, learn about sex, learn about, body safety and protecting their body. And then there have been people that have asked, I want to teach girls club. I want to do this too.
Mhm.
I want to lead these groups in my area. And so right now, I actually have a wait list that I've created. It's just through social media right now, or you can go to my website and you can have access to the wait list. And so the class will be available like sometime in mid-April, and then I'll run a teacher training. So I will teach people how to lead these groups, what the curriculum is,
Mhm.
how to run the class, how to set up a safe space, how to ensure that the girls feel, that there's a predictable environment and it's fun and their friends are there. And, this is what we teach. This is how we teach it. So it's a teacher training. which
Yeah.
is really exciting
I
for me because
love that for you. Yes. I was thinking, I was
oh,
like, this is so full circle. Here it comes.
yes. So I'm really getting to still use my teacher gifts, and just
Mhm.
the thought of other girls in other areas having this experience and have it not just be local to Kansas City
Yeah.
makes me so excited because,
Mhm.
I just feel like it's a really important it's important information and education, but just the whole experience is something that I'm just so excited to be able to give other women the opportunity to teach this and other girls everywhere the opportunity to have this
Yeah.
experience. And also, I will say, as a teacher of this material, it's been really therapeutic because I'm able to teach girls some of the things that I wish I knew. My favorite things to teach are, well, I didn't know about this. So this is what I thought. I thought something was wrong with me. And it turns out I was just going through puberty. And, it's kind
And
of like
when's
this.
your series of, "Oh, I'm just going through perimenopause."
I
And
know.
I didn't know about this. Hello. You got a
I
whole nother
know.
you
was
you're
gonna
this
say,
is just gonna grow.
Tracy's got a she could be your
I'll be your
substitute
teacher on that one.
substitute teacher
Yes,
for
this is
that.
what yes, this is what women want. It's like we could do
Yeah.
girls club all through the years and all the changes because there's so
Yes.
many.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so give everybody your social media handles and your website where they can find you.
Sure. So Instagram is juicy.wellness.woman. And then my website is www.girlsclubkc.com. So those
Aw-
are the two places you can find me.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I just
Yeah.
want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm glad that this finally came to fruition from
I
all
know.
the connections and just making it happen of all the things. And I just want to say thank you so much. So we'll have your Instagram and your website in our show notes for our listeners. And yeah,
Great.
anything else, T?
No, we're just so thankful that you shared, and we love that you listened to your calling and just followed your heart and your passion, and I just love what God's doing and turning all of this into a new story for you and a new passion, and I love it. So, that's exciting for you.
Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for having me. This was a really fun conversation. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, housewives, until next time.
Bye.
Bye.